Hi, I'm Terry Murphy, Senior Editor for Realty Times Women in Business, Women in Real Estate, and In the Men's Room with Murph. But today we have a super powerhouse for women in business. We spotlight a leader in the world of justice. I'm excited to introduce to you the first female Chief Supreme Court Justice for the state of Tennessee, Janice Holder. Say hello, Miss Janice.
Hi there, Terry. Thank you for having me. It's just great to be here.
Oh my goodness. You know, I do a little research. Obviously we were friends. First of all, everybody should know that your mother was the magnet for that. Janice's mother was Unbounded Energy, Unbounded, and we met at a St. Jude luncheon where both of us were active on the board. And I had no idea, because I was new to Memphis and new to you, what your extensive background and amazing contributions have been. Your breakthrough into this segment of governance really is a remarkable in itself. With the resume is enormous, by the way. You need coffee. But I'd like you to share your journey. I mean, you started out as a clerk. Did you always want to get into that particular venue? What was your impetus? I know you're an only child. It wasn't like your mom or dad were in it. So how did you find yourself? And now where you are today? I mean, this is an amazing journey, and I can't wait to share it with everybody else.
Well, Terry, it's a very interesting journey because I never intended to be a lawyer, much less a judge. My parents were high school graduates, and they sort of thought I'd be a nurse. Was really, I think, where I was starting out. And as I went to college, I was a psych major, and I got into experimental psychology. So I applied to grad schools all over the country for psychology, psych grad school, and graduate records exams. I took the GREs, and ETS forgot to send my scores to the colleges to which I applied. So I got rejected by all of the colleges, all the grad schools, so I was unable to attend school that year. So having to sit out for a year allowed me to rethink my decision, and I decided I was going to sort of cast a wider net and see what else was out there. So I applied to Pan Am Airways to be a flight attendant. I applied to one law school. I applied to paralegal school in Philadelphia, and I applied to Pitt to get a teaching certificate in French, because that was my minor. And then I just sort of waited. And I got accepted at all of the things to which I applied. And I decided that I would go to law school for a year and see if I liked it. And so I went to law school for a year.
That is amazing. Well, one of my early thoughts was to be a paralegal, because I thought that was kind of interesting, and being in court. But I must say, I didn't even know that about you. We've been friends for a while, about the flight attendant thing. But OMG, are we ever glad you got into what you did, because your clerkship, you know, it started privately in Pittsburgh, and then it just kept growing. And what's interesting is, along the way, your intentionality was to help women. You did that almost consistently since you started, and you retired in 2014 from the Supreme Court. But that's 24 years of judicial service. And in there, you must have seen gaps, I would say, because that was a fairly male-dominated dominion. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. When I applied to be a clerk for the judge in the Western District of Pennsylvania, there were only 2 judges on that entire bench who would even interview women. He was one of them, and everybody knew who they were. So I applied to the 2 judges who would hire women, and he hired me, and that enabled me to have a clerkship on the federal level. When I clerked, and I clerked with him for 2 years, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted his job. And so
wait, don't gloss over that. So people who don't know you know that you barely make 5 feet. I just love that spirit that just came out of there. I wanted his job.
Really,
that's awesome.
It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and he was wonderful. He was a wonderful judge. So that was when I decided I wanted to be a judge. So I was in Pittsburgh for a few years in private practice, and then made the decision to move to Memphis, largely because of the weather, strangely enough, because I was getting frostbite in Pittsburgh. So I moved to Memphis and realized that I had just shot myself in the foot because I didn't know anybody here and there was no way I was going to be a judge here. So,
Seriously.
yes.
Because Memphis wasn't that progressive to begin with.
That is something of an understatement. Yes.
Okay, well, I was trying to be nice because I'm from Chicago and I moved to Memphis, like, what? But it's interesting that you would pick Memphis, and then you must have had some challenges along the way, because even though you had someone that believed in you and allowed, and carried you through this part, did you not notice that there were several challenges that you had being a female in that area?
Well, to start with, I couldn't get a job. That started it out. And it's a funny story, and I'll tell this on the gentleman who did this. He has since died, but he reminded me of it. So I think it's an okay story. I was employed by a law firm, and the way I got the job, I thought, was that I was being interviewed, and the interviewer said to me, "Well, do you plan to have a family?" And I said, "Well, I'll be happy to answer the question, but you've probably just violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act." And he said, "You mean I can't ask that question?" And I said, "Well, it depends on how many employees you have." And I think at that time it was 15 was the cutoff. And he said, "Oh, okay." And we went on and finished the interview. When I got home, the phone was ringing and they were offering me a job. So my assumption was I was being hired so that I wouldn't sue them, which I wasn't going to do anyway.
I think they hired you because you were spicy.
And then it turned out that the person who hired me actually hired me because he thought I was Jewish.
This is taking some amazing turns, but this is fascinating. Keep going.
Yes. And so he came into a conference room and started talking about the Arabs and how awful it was and what was going on in the Middle East. And I said, "Well, my background, two of my grandparents came from Syria." And there was just dead silence in the room. And I left and I thought, what have I done now? Because I was always doing something. I was a Yankee in the middle of all this. And there was always some faux pas. And one of the attorneys said to me, "Janice, you were hired because you were Jewish." And that's how I got my first job in Memphis.
That's just crazy good and crazy nuts at the same time. That's just something. Well, that's an interesting onboarding to being a judge. But I mean, clearly being a judge had to challenge you every single day. Core values versus the law. I mean, you are very black and white when it comes to the law. But what was your biggest challenge to stay positive? Because clearly you were always in some kind of conflict situation.
I really found, Terry, that being a judge was my calling. It was really the thing that was, I don't want to say easy, but it was easy. And it was really what I was better able to do than advocate for a cause. I could see both sides of a position and make a reasoned determination of the best solution. And that, to me, was really what I was able to do. I had trouble advocating. I could do it, but first I had to decide which way was really the way I wanted to go, or the way it should be done, or the way the solution should be arrived at, and then back off of that, and then advocate knowing what I knew, which was that the outcome should be X. I know it sounds strange, but that's the way I did it.
That's just,
so for me, being a judge was like, thank you, Lord. I mean, it let me do what I thought
amazing.
I was able to do.
And it's empowered you to meet some pretty amazing people. So I just want everybody to listen. We were just doing lunch one day, and Judge Janice says she went back home and she had lunch with someone, and when she named him, I literally dropped my fork, because I was like, you know him? I mean, you have some names that are bigger than life in that industry, and I wondered if you would just share some of the people that you obviously had relationships with, professional relationships that helped you supported you, mentored you? I mean, there were some outstanding people in your life.
There really were, and it's really hard to really pick one person over another, but I will tell you that one of the highlights of my judicial career was being able to spend time around Sandra Day O'Connor. She is an amazing person. She was the first woman to sit on the United States Supreme Court. And she's just an amazing person. And I was fortunate enough when she was here in Memphis in 2009 for a conference. She stayed with me for 3 days and spoke at the conference. And I really got to know her fairly well. And I maintained that friendship over the years. And she's just...
I recall when you said
Yeah.
Sandra was Sandra Day O'Connor, when she was got to stay with you, that the amount of security, not that anyone could ever find you to begin with, because it's like witness protection to find you, was amazing. Bless
Yeah.
her heart. But
Yeah.
she was an amazing person that you got to be with. But before we get into your mediation, you also you have an interesting circle of friends. And I recall being the odd man out, being invited to one where everybody there was of some caliber. And I remember you saying, oh, it's judges and attorneys and whatever. And I get there and it's literally, I mean, it's literally a glitterati of who's who in judicial law, including some of the firsts in Tennessee, specifically Bernice. If you want to tell us a little bit about Bernice.
Bernice Donald, I first met her probably when she was running for General Sessions Judge in Memphis in the early 80s. And of course, she's been a judge in every possible place there is to be. She was a General Sessions Judge, she was a bankruptcy court judge, she was a district court judge, and now she sits on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And she has an amazing career, and it knows everybody in the US and beyond. She's an incredible person.
Well, not only is she incredible, but for those that don't know who she is, she's also an African-American woman.
Yes.
And talk about certain industries and certain verticals where there is not a good diversity. She is amazing, and she's so energetic, but she's also so engaging. She's a remarkable woman. And when you would think of someone of that stature, you don't write the right story. She's just like a big warm blanket, and she was just as gracious as she could be. And I can't even imagine, just not forget the female part of it, but the whole diversity issue in that quadrant of law had to be amazing for her.
Yes. And I don't think people can really imagine what it was like. I graduated from law school in 1975, and there really weren't many women out there. There were a few. And in Pittsburgh, where I started, there was a first wave of women, and the law firms hired their token woman. That's all they needed, and they didn't have to hire anybody else. And that's kind of when I stepped into it. And it was really difficult there. It was more difficult in Memphis, where it just wasn't, women just weren't welcomed. And there were fewer women here. It's hard to look back. And for the women who are practicing now, graduating from law school, their classes are 50% or more female. They're not underrepresented in any shape or form. My class in law school had 13 women, and it was the largest class of women that the school had ever had.
Well, that's my point. You've been a trailblazer, dynamo since the beginning, and now have segued into mediation. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about mediation in your work and the kinds of things that you do as a mediator. And you've been, that was the American Arbitration Association and National Roster of Arbitrators. And in 2018, you were the co-founder of one here in Memphis, the American Inn of Court. That's kind of a perfect segue, I would say, from what you were doing and now what you can do based on all that experiential and intellectual capital you had as being a judge.
It's an interesting transition. I wasn't certain that it would be that natural, but it has been. When I was on the circuit court bench here, mediation was just beginning to take hold. And I had a pilot program that I had in circuit court where I had people volunteer to do mediation and sort of volunteer to be the mediated case. And, but I had never seen a mediation, and I had never obviously participated in one in any shape or form. So when I left the bench, I still hadn't seen a mediation. I had gotten mediation training along the way to be listed as a Rule 31 mediator, but I'd never seen a real live mediation. So someone asked me to do a mediation, and I said, okay, I'll do mediation. I've had the training. Let's see what happens. And it really did turn out to be, I think, a pretty good fit. Mediation is one of those things that really can diffuse a lot of situations, especially helpful in family law cases, but it's helpful in every type of case. What you have is a neutral person, and that's the mediator, who goes in and talks to both sides and attempts to help the parties reach their own resolution. So it's not like a judge where you tell people what they're going to do or make a decision about a case. It is about understanding the case, understanding people well enough to bring them together to reach a solution that they both can agree on.
So is a mediator appointed by the court, or do people just hire you to mediate instead of going to court? I mean, tell us the process that goes behind selecting a mediator and what you should look for.
Any number of things. Courts can appoint mediators if they're asked to do so. And typically they're given a number of names and they'll pick a name, or they'll let the parties do that. Sometimes even before a case is filed in court, the parties can decide it would be beneficial to try to mediate the case before they file it, meaning that it's pre-suit. It's a pre-suit mediation. It can be, mediations can arise in any way, shape, or form, even just before the trial or before the case is ever filed. It's a very versatile tool, and attorneys are very adept at understanding how to use that tool.
So there's plenty of options then.
Yes.
For that. And so if somebody wanted to find out more about that, where would they go to find out more about you?
About me would be my website. Janice at privatelegalsolutions.com is my address. So my website is privatelegalsolutions.com. You can find me there. JaniceHolder.com is my personal website, but Private Legal Solutions is my mediation website. There's a National Academy of Dispute Neutrals, which also has a roster of neutrals, and I'm part of that. You can see my resume there. And the American Arbitration Association also has mediators that they have on their roster. I'm on that roster as well.
That's pretty amazing things. You've done a lot for women in legal as well. You're co-founder of a number of different programs for women. Do you just want to give us a quick update on what's going on there? What's still happening?
There, of course, we've got the Association for Women Attorneys here in Memphis, which is just thriving. I'm very pleased that the women who have graduated from law school recently have really taken it up. There's also a chapter in the law school here. So it's really kind of exciting to be around a lot of younger women who are doing a lot of fun things. That's going on. We have TLAW, Tennessee Women Lawyers Association, and we've got various and assorted other women's organizations that are legally related. So there's never a shortage of organizations to turn to if you're interested, if you're a woman in the law and are interested in promoting women.
You did serve the Commission on Women and Minorities in the 90s, Tennessee Lawyers Association, a founding member. I mean, obviously you've had a support for women in legal services for a long time. I had a little bit of work that I did with the Memphis Association of Legal Services, MALSE, where I got to meet some pretty exciting people. But do you mind if we shift to something a little more personal?
Sure.
So here I meet this woman and her mother, and I find out that there's some very interesting facts about your real life, besides being this mega power in the judicial system. And that is that you're obviously quite disciplined, because there's not that many women or that many women judges or people in your age bracket that are black belts in karate. Apparently, when you moved to Memphis, you felt the need to learn karate, or did you know that before you got here?
No, actually, I was very heavy into riding horses, and I sold my last horse and decided I needed something else to do besides riding horses, since I didn't have that outlet easily available. So through a friend, was introduced to the person who is my current and has always been my karate instructor, who's a grandmaster of the Tennessee Karate Institute here in Memphis. And I started in 1989, and I have been doing it ever since, so a little over 30 years.
That's all. 30 years as a black belt. Ballroom dancing fits right in with karate. It's just a natural segue.
Even things you don't know about, Terry. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
Even you do not know about. But yes, I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, because I really believe that it all fits together in some way. The body only moves in certain ways. So if you understand the way your body moves, you can pretty much apply that to everything. But I really do filter everything through the karate.
You filter everything through
karate.
Oh, through karate. Well, I would.
The way my body moves, the way I breathe is all disciplined by.
So amazing. So, Janice, I have to tell you personally, it's one of my greatest gifts to have met you, and I'm just beyond delighted to share you with a community of women may never have the opportunity to meet you, which is what we do at Women's Wisdom Network. I think that your leadership and your influence gives women permission. I know that I typically end these with if I only knew then what I know now, and I know that you are adamant, let's just say very adamant, about the fact that you're happy where you landed. Exactly. There's no regrets.
My feeling is that every choice that I've made along the way has put me in a place that has allowed me to be where I am now. And so I wouldn't change anything. Even if it doesn't look like it was a great idea at the time, it's still what brought me where I am now. And that's why I would never look back and say, if I only knew then what I know now, I would have done X. Well, I wouldn't have done X.
I know that about you. That's why I had to ask. So I know that you've made over 400 plus presentations to legal associations, groups, law students, elementary, middle school, high school, college. I mean, you've done a lot of presentations. Civic organizations. If someone wanted to hire you to speak or to present a program or even consulting or mediation work, what's the best way to reach you?
I would say my general email address is justicejanice@gmail.com, and that is the easiest way to find me. That will get me, believe me. It will get my attention.
That and just one more time on your website.
It is privatelegalsolutions.com or janiceholder.com.
There you go. So here we are with a woman who's been a trailblazer in the field of justice, going from a clerk to the first female Chief Supreme Court Justice, and continues to do work and live life large. I'd love to say even with Louis, who's your little fur baby, who's equally, what would you say about Louis? He's high in personality, right?
High personality and very opinionated.
Very opinionated, which I love about him. Thank you so much for joining us. I do appreciate your sharing your time and your wisdom. I'm Terry Murphy with the Women's Wisdom Network. Thanks for joining us.